Hi there and welcome to my Money Tips podcast. This is Charles Kelly. For those of you who don't know me, I spent 25 years in financial services and I'm the author of the book Yes, Money Can Buy You Happiness. I'm bringing out a new book very soon called Borrow and Grow Rich, which will be talking about how to use other people's money to get rich and how other people have done this for thousands of years. So watch out for that one. Today, I'm going through my sort of weekly roundup of the news. It's Friday. You might not be seeing this on Friday, but it's Friday. For some of us, it's the start of the weekend. Maybe people in America are still working. People in Asia are probably sleeping now. So it's amazing that we can broadcast all at the same time. But we run through the weekly news, and obviously this week a lot's been happening, particularly in the UK, with new rules starting today to mean that you've got to wear face coverings in shops and places different places, surgeries and that sort of thing. And that's a good thing, I think, because too many people in the UK don't wear them and they sort of just take it for granted. You walk down the street and maybe only 1 in 10 is wearing any form of face covering, which disturbs me, certainly. And I think they should be worn everywhere or in the streets, like in many European countries. And, in Asia, I remember the time of the SARS virus and they were checking people coming into the airports in Asian countries. And people have gotten into this habit of wearing face masks. It helps with, stopping yourself getting colds and spreading colds and flu. Secondly, it can help with the pollution and just breathing in bad air and that sort of thing. So I think it's a good thing. And many people in Asian countries, you'll see them wearing these masks while it's going around the street. And I think that's a good thing. I think we should adopt that habit here. And, here we've had too much of people going around with a cold and spreading it and spreading colds and flu around the workplace by sneezing, wiping their face and then shaking hands with you. I think hopefully these new hygiene rules will be here to stay and stop all this sort of spreading of disease, not just, coronavirus, but all sorts of diseases that can be spread through close contact and not very much hygiene. I don't know if you know this, women listening, but a lot of men even go into toilets and don't even wash their hands. They use the toilet, which in a man's toilet is open urinals, and they just walk out without washing their hands. It's unbelievable, and that I'd say probably 10 to 20% of men I see in toilets don't even wash their hands coming out of a toilet. So there's me washing my hands and then putting a hanky in my hand and opening the door and that sort of thing. I've always been a little bit careful like that, but there you go. Anyway, that's the UK. We seem to be getting a grip with the virus, but many shops don't seem to be opening fully. For some reason, they've kind of half opened and said, we're going to open up some of the branches, or we're going to perhaps have a limited opening time or a limited space available. When I went to one shop yesterday, there was a group of people outside, but I could see people inside the shop, but the door was locked. I said, what's going on? Actually, I wanted to buy something for my bike. And, I just didn't want to order any more stuff online. I was just fed up with it. I want to walk down the shop and buy it. I went and the two guys outside said, well, you can go in, but you can't buy anything. I said, what? You can go in, but you can't buy anything. You can only pick up stuff that you've ordered. And this is a huge, big bike shop called Halfords, if you want to know. Halfords, probably the biggest bike shop and that kind of car spares type of thing shop in the country, Halfords. They've got this note up saying, due to coronavirus, that's the big excuse now, coronavirus, we can't do this, we can't do that. You phone your doctor about something. No, we're not doing that at the moment. We're not seeing anybody. Everything's the coronavirus card comes out and that becomes the excuse. But why that shop couldn't open properly, I just don't know. And a lot of shops also are closing down altogether. There's going to be so many big chains of shops, fashion retailers closing down or cutting back drastically on the number of branches that they've got. That will be a feature in the UK and America, where I hear many clothing brands are going out of business or will be snapped up and maybe revamped as a smaller operation. So that's what's happening. Now, in the UK, I announced a few weeks ago that the government is bringing out a new home insulation grant, which gives you things like cavity wall insulation. And that means that within a house, most houses built after the 30s, you've got an outer wall and an inner wall, and then this gap in between. Now, presumably it was there for a purpose to allow airflow, but it also is very energy inefficient and allows a lot of the heat to go out of the house. So the government are announcing a new grant scheme to give free home insulation, or certainly heavily subsidised home insulation, to make your home more energy efficient and warmer and so on. Now, there was a scheme like this before that ran for many, many years. And on one of my properties, I took advantage of this, and they came along and said, "Do you want free home insulation?" And I thought, free? No one gives anything free, but it actually was free. And then they do perhaps up to £1,000 of work putting all this foam insulation inside the walls. And that worked, and I sold that property actually. But however, this has been done all over the country, and it turns out that a lot of the work has not been done correctly. And to cut a long story short, the work's not been done correctly, and it causes massive amounts of damp in the home and costs, 3 or 4 times the amount to put right that it costs to put the insulation in. Because when they put the insulation in, they drill a hole in the brick and squirt this foam stuff in, and they think everything's fine. But to get it out again and to redo the job is a job costing many thousands. So people have said to the contractors that did the work and under these government grants, well, I've got a problem here, can you come and sort it out? And the contractors, knowing that they've got so many claims against them, have just closed the company down. They've just liquidated the company, gone out of business, and with limited liability, you can't touch the owners or the directors. So that's been a big problem. So consumer groups now are saying that this work should be quality checked, and there is an industry body that does this, but they're completely useless. They're controlled by the industry. So you need to, I think my advice would be to use only the largest companies. I'm sorry if you're a small contractor, but why would I put my trust in somebody that could just shut the company down just like that, go in to see their accountant and say, we're closing the company down, all debts and all bets are off, finished. Whereas if you use a company, say like British Gas, there might be a bit more difficult to deal with in some ways. You can't get through to them on the phone and that sort of thing. But if you use a larger company like British Gas that are going to be there in years to come, then they will come back and guarantee the work and hopefully do the job properly anyway. Because when they did my house, they did 2 or 3 surveys before they even started the work, whereas a lot of smaller contractors were just paid by the square meter, and they're just banging this stuff in and not really caring if it's done properly. So that's just a bit of advice for you if you're thinking about home insulation grants. Use only the best contractors, the biggest contractors who've been around a long, long time and are unlikely to go out of business if there are errors on the job. Now, a lot of people at this time are going on holiday or coming back from holiday. You need to check your holiday destination to see what the situation is with coronavirus. Like for instance, Portugal, for instance, is a country on the watch list at the moment, and check that you've got proper insurance cover if things go wrong there, because some insurance companies are wriggling their way out of claims, and that's why you need to check with your insurance company and with the Foreign Office to see is this country safe to go to, because you might not be covered if things go wrong. And if you come into the UK from a number of countries, you may be subject to a self-quarantine rule for 14 days if you're coming from a country that there's no, what they call an air bridge with. So you've got to really watch out for that if you come in here. I think international travel is very difficult at the moment, and I probably wouldn't want to sit on a plane for hours and hours and hours next to people that could give me a nasty virus or whatever. I would just be a bit careful. Fortunately from the UK, you can drive into France, you can drive to Spain, Germany, all sorts of countries, Ireland, without sort of coming into contact with people. We've got the Channel Tunnel, obviously, in case you don't know. Now, if you're going on holiday, make sure your passport is valid and has at least 6 months left from the time you're going on holiday. Because if you go to some countries, you need a passport with 6 months left on the end. You can't enter a country and your passport's expiring next month. And if you're thinking about running down to get a last-minute passport, as I have, I've got my passports on the day. You used to be able to go into the passport office in London and get a passport processed on the same day. I don't think that service is there. But the backlog of people rushing to get passports has now reached 400,000. And obviously they've been producing less of these passports. Again, I'm not quite sure why. why they couldn't just keep going with these passport processing. As I said, they're playing the coronavirus card again. So if you're planning on getting the passport soon, then I think you're onto a hide into nothing, because I can't see, if there's 400 in the backlog, I don't know how people would get passports if they just realise, they get that cupboard out and that drawer and they think, oh, where's my passport? And they get it out, oh my God, it's going to expire next month. Then you could be in trouble if you're planning on holidays. UK unemployment, we reported this week, could hit 15%. With the second COVID wave, the OECD report, other reports that many employers, up to a third of employers, could be thinking about cutting jobs in the next 3 months. And unemployment, we know from another source, from the said they think that unemployment here could reach 4 million. Now this comes off the back of record low unemployment and record employment, record numbers of people in employment just at the end of last year. And now we're going to a situation where we could be back to the 2008 financial crisis, where you could see up to 4 million people or 8% unemployment even then. But it depends on how quickly we kind of bounce back from this. Now the other surprising thing is that the housing market has rebounded rather quickly. And a lot of people are out there buying properties, despite the fact that unemployment could reach record levels. And this is partly due to a tax cut in stamp duty by the Chancellor Rishi Sunak, and various other, and perhaps through pent-up demand, people who want to move. And so I did an article on this yesterday. You can have a look at it on moneytipsdaily.com. But mortgages are becoming a bit more difficult to obtain, and I think this summer there'll be less and less products, more expensive mortgages, even though these greedy banks can raise money at record lows because the base rates are less than 1%. But these banks are charging now many times the base rate, perhaps 10, 15, 20 times the base rate, which is I think it's just greedy, because when base rates were 10%, banks would charge you a mortgage of, say, 12% on the mortgage rate. And yet when rates went down to 0.25%, they were charging, not 2% over, they were charging sort of 3 and 4% over that 0.25%. So if you actually multiply it, it's many times the rate that they're charging. But that's why when you go into any major city in the world, if you look at the biggest buildings, the biggest skyscrapers, they're usually owned by banks and insurance companies, because they control most of the money, as we know. I also said this week that if you have a business and you want to claim on your business interruption insurance, you should do so now, because consumer groups and the FCA are investigating insurance companies and taking them to court, because insurance companies have refused to pay out for business interruption claims, because they say coronavirus is not a business interruption that they cover. Where do they get this from? I think they mean pandemics, because I don't think anyone was really aware of the coronavirus years and years ago. But there you go. So that's the general sort of update of the week and what's going on here. As I said, the economy is starting to move again, and certainly the traffic has got worse. That's always an indicator for me, is how much traffic is on the streets. But some say that's because they're making more bike lanes. They're closing down major arterial roads in and out of London and making them from, say, 2 lanes down to 1 lane to create bike lanes. Now, if you're a cyclist, you might think, great, I love bike lanes. But it's creating major hold-ups in London at a time when we want to reduce emissions. Of course, if traffic is down to a standstill, it actually increases emissions. There's more traffic sort of sitting there rather than moving through. But there you go. Now, this weekend, if you want to know a bit more about property, there's a free webinar on how to buy, refurbish and refinance properties. Now, buying, refurbish and refinance is different from buy to flip. If you buy and do the property up and then flip it, you will obviously then pay tax, because you're paying tax on capital gains. But if you buy, refurbish and refinance and get most of your money out by refinancing, then you can hold on to that asset, not pay any tax. Your money's coming out, it's not taxable. And that asset then can be rented out, giving you a cash flow producing asset for life. And the returns are perpetual, exponential, because you've got no money in the deal, and yet you're still earning money from that property. So if you want to find out more about that, how to source properties, how to get them at a discount, how to buy, refurbish and refinance, then join the webinar on the 26th of July, 7 p.m. That's Sunday, 7 p.m. Free webinar, and I'll put a link up on this page so you can find out how to register for the webinar. I think it will be very useful, and you've got nothing to lose. So have a look at that webinar on buy, refurbish and finance. Thanks for listening, and thanks for everyone tuned in on Facebook Live. John and Coley from Philippines, great to see you. Must be up late there because it's very late there in Asia. So you're having a late night, I think, but great to see you. A very talented artist there from the Philippines who's actually attended courses in London. And thanks for everyone who listens on my podcast, the Audible postcard on